Welcome back to the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I am alone today. Very sad. So we'll be doing another tier list. So this is gonna be doing the tier list for all the mainline Pokemon games. I don't really replay a lot of these games too often. I don't, some people do this religiously where they replay the game over and over and over again, trying to do different runs of the game. I don't do that. That's a waste of time. I usually play the games, maybe once, twice, three times. I'm not going to be replaying it, trying to, do all these weird Nuzlocke runs or whatever. A lot of my focus is going to be more on the post game because that's where I spend most of my time. You try to get through the main game not as quickly as possible, but you get through the main game, and then you're spending most of your time in the post game, doing the post game content, the Battle Frontier, all the challenges, playing the Pokédex. That's usually where I spend most of my time, so that's where more of my opinion on the game's going to be based on. And I'm going to be focusing more on the enhanced versions of the game. And part of that is not to repeat myself, but also I feel like if you're going to recommend a friend to play a game, you're not going to tell them to play Diamond or Pearl, you're going to tell them to play Platinum. You're not going to tell them to play Ruby or Sapphire. You say, hey, play Emerald. I think that's the better game. So that's my reasoning. And obviously, I think the tiers are pretty explanatory. S is, best, very good, good, okay, not okay, and failure for, I think it'll become obvious when we start. So, first game on the list is Red and Blue. A lot of I think, appeal to these games is really just nostalgia. I was around, but I didn't play the games when I was young. And I think that's where a lot of the people's nostalgia for it comes from. The Pokemon are very iconic. The game was a huge phenomenon at the time. But going back to playing it, it feels a little older, not as fun, not as polished. I do believe some of the issues are overblown, like the glitches and like the psychic type. When you play the game, yeah, psychic's overrated, but does it really affect your playthrough that much? I mean, you're not fighting nothing but, you know, psychic types. You're Mewtwo the whole game, so that's a bit overblown. I think the bigger issues is just the battle system. It's not as polished as it became later on. Plus, going back to these games, you have to remind yourself that there's one special stat. Speed is everything. It's a very different game. There are some good things though, like I think Blue is probably the best rival in the game. Even though you're constantly beating him, he's still just so arrogant that you just kind of want to like just slap him, and it gives you more motivation to beat him. So many games now have, really friendly rivals, which I don't know, it's not as appealing. When you beat them, you more feel bad than feel like amped up to beat them. You're not motivated. Especially with Blue, he became the champion. He's always one step ahead of you. He becomes a champion right before you. So that was always fun. And obviously these games laid the groundwork for all of the Pokemon sequels. I mean, basically every game copied this formula, but with a new coat of paint for every region, new Pokemon to use this time. So again, but just because it's the first game in a series, I don't think you have to put it very high. I understand, respect the elders kind of thing, but we're also talking about a video game. Just because it's first doesn't mean it's the best, so I'm going to put it in the OK tier. I really don't think there's a reason to come back to play it unless you're feeling very nostalgic for it. Which, I understand people have an attachment towards it, but I don't, so I don't really think this game as fondly. Oh, another thing too, the sprites were terrible. You ever look at the sprites for Gen 1? A lot of them hardly match what they're supposed to look like. And it's not even like a hardware limitation, because in Crystal they look better. It's just, I don't know what's going on. So next game on the list is Pokemon Yellow. This is more of a reskin mod, kind of the original Red and Blue, at least in the West. So this one, again, a lot of it is nostalgia, but also appeals to the nostalgia of the anime because that is something I watched growing up. I watched for a good chunk of years. And yeah, it's fun seeing, like Jesse and James, Pikachu's your starter even though he's terrible. Usually my strategy in playing Pokemon, especially in the pre-experience share days, is just to overlevel my starter, but it's not as easy to do when Pikachu's kind of bad stat-wise. It still has a lot of the same problems as Red and Blue, but at least now Pikachu's walking with you. You've got access to more starters. It's a little more fun than Red and Blue. Still obviously the same issues, but a little more fun as Red and Blue. Again, not much of a reason to go back to, at least in my opinion. Ranked it slightly ahead. So I'm going to skip over Gold and Silver and go straight to Crystal. Uh, Introduced a lot of new things. I know like there was the special split. I think it had breeding now. The special split's more the big one because before, again, special was just one stat, which was just kind of stupid. But now, uh, now it's its own thing. Uh, Another thing too is the Johto region. I like because the Kanto region was more. It felt almost like the real world, like a little more modern. Johto feels a little more countryside, a little more typical Japanese culture stuff. I don't know, it just looks nice, especially in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But I like the region, even though the region itself is kind of not that great. The look of it's good, the feel of it's good, but it relies heavily on the Kanto region. Like you can't have Johto existing on itself. You kind of need the Kanto region because there's some stuff in other cities that you can't access. But the great thing about Crystal is obviously the post game everyone talks about, which of course I agree. I think the post game is great. You get an extra region to explore, which they've never really done before or since, with exception of the remakes. You get eight extra gyms to go through. You get the legendaries to catch, the red battle, and Crystal was the first game to have the battle tower, which is nice. Kind of going back to, because I went back to it. The battle tower, not really anything special, but it's still just nice to have other stuff to do besides just completing the Pokédex. It's also the first game to have the day-night system, which uh, I'm okay with the day-night system, but I prefer it now where it's a cycle of 20 minutes. I just when you're an adult, you don't have as much time to play video games, so you want to do something during the day or whatever, but you can't, so you get off work, so having to basically only play the game at night kind of isn't as fun. I know you can always mess with the clock settings, but it's just nice when you can go through several day-night cycles within an hour as opposed to waiting real lifetime. Oh, another thing too, I didn't mention like the main villain plot in Gen 1, it's just a bunch of like it feels almost realistic. Team Rocket just like trying to capture and sell Pokemon, and I know they create Mewtwo and all that stuff, but Gen 2's villain plot almost it's not the same. It's just almost like a bunch of cultists trying to get back their cult. Like they're trying to they capture the radio tower. Like Giovanni, come back to us. It's not really anything special. In fact, I feel like there are times where maybe they could be better off without a main villain. And this feels like one of those examples where they didn't really need to have Team Rocket coming back. It could be just, you're going on your adventure. Might make the game a little more bland, but I don't really think they add much to it either, so I don't really think it's anything special. So Crystal, despite it being much better than the originals, I'm still going to put it in C tier, just because I don't really believe there's much of a reason to come back to Crystal. So next game on the list is, going into the order of the releases I'm going after are Fire Red and Leaf Green. And I think these are, not only the best ways to play Gen 1, but the best remake, or not the best remakes, but the best way to replay Gen 1, because there are two remakes for it, so we'll get to later. I think it takes the best of Gen 1 and removes a lot of the bad, jank oldness from it. Because Gen 3, in my opinion, is always where modern Pokemon felt like it started. Going back to Gen 1 and Gen 2, they feel older, not just because they're on the Game Boy, but just like the mechanically and then some of the other stuff in the game that makes it feel older. Gen 3 is where it starts to really feel like the modern Pokemon games. Even though it's still 2D sprites and all that stuff, it's just the way the game plays and all that stuff, it feels more new. So it removes a lot of the jank, it's got more of the modern features introduced Gen 3, which really are main features going forward, like I mentioned, the special split, now there's abilities and held items. So all that stuff's good. It just feels like a very clean, not clean, but like a very pure experience of playing Gen 1. There's no, because you get to like a lot of the older games, like the story's much more involved. You play Fire Red and Leaf Green, there's almost no story to its benefit. You're just trying to complete the challenges, you stop Team Rocket on the way, and you become the champion. So in the way, it's a much more simpler game. Another thing too is the Sevi Islands that they introduced. It's a little extra post game they added, just I guess lengthen the runtime, and I'm kind of surprised it never appeared again in a game. Unfortunately, one game it should have appeared and it didn't, but it's never really appeared again, which I think is kind of sad. But then again, we never really revisit regions. There's more legendaries to catch, more Johto Pokemon to catch to complete your Pokédex. Has a bit of a battle tower, so little extra stuff. That's also what hurts in my opinion. As simple as it is, there's not much of a post game either. It's very I said, very easy experience, very easy to get through the game, but also post-game not much there either. And there was one thing which I know people talk about. It's you can't evolve your Pokemon. Like for example, if you have a Golbat, you can't evolve into a Crobat until after you become the champion. Which this is the one time I guess I will agree with it because it's a remake of the very first game. So in a way to kind of capture that, you're only stuck with the 151 Pokemon. So this is the one time I guess I'll agree with that, not having non-Gen 1 Pokemon in the game because it recreates that experience, but this is really the only time I'll agree with that. And obviously, Fire and the Green, very good games. A little on the simpler side, but very fun. Definitely, you know, I'll start with the good, like Gen 3 is like to Gen 5, I think people say this and I don't disagree, it's this like the golden age of Pokemon. So next game on the list is Pokemon Emerald, and in my opinion it's the definitive way to experience the Hoenn region. I think every generation a lot of the Pokemon are great. They're great in Emerald. Emerald too. If you look at some of the gym leaders and teams in Ruby and Sapphire, Emerald definitely improves on them. So gym leaders, Elite Four, all those people have much better teams. Emerald, or at least Ruby, Sapphire were the first generation to introduce double battles, abilities, weather, and contests. So it was the kind of the start of modern Pokemon. I know weather was in Gen 2, but this is where at least I remember actually seeing it kind of affecting the game. So it's kind of, at least for me, the start of it. Another thing I like about Emerald 2 is that, Ruby and Sapphire, you have Team Aqua and Team Magma just focusing the whole game on them, and they're both kind of stupid. I mean, I know it's a video game for little kids, but their plan of just, especially Team Aqua, is expanding the ocean, and let's have less land for people, unless you're trying to flood the earth. I don't really see why. Expanding the land makes more sense, but whatever. At least in Emerald, the two idiots going back and forth, at least that's a little more involved and more fun to play with. And another thing too is I played Emerald first before I played Ruby and Sapphire, so I've always found it weird not having both of the villainous teams there. So that's kind of why I recommend Emerald. At least for me, it's also just how I remember the game. I remember both Team Aqua and Team Magma battling it out, and they both realized, God, we're idiots. Like, they really never thought their plan through. As their plans happening, like, oh my God, what were we thinking? And I think I mentioned before, I think the Hoenn regions, I like the Hoenn region too. Like, I usually like most regions, but the Hoenn region I like, it's a very tropical and diverse region. Especially where it takes place in Japan, but, it definitely feels more tropical. A lot of the beaches and, a little more rainforest, all the rain. I don't know, it's a nice change from the more the moderate climate from Gen 1 and Gen 2. This is also a bit of a harder game from what I remember. Mainly because, my strategy of playing Pokemon has always been overleveling the starter. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. A lot of people like to have a team. I would like to have a team, but I hate grinding, so I never do it. And, most games, at least before this point, they usually give you a very powerful legendary at the right before the 8th gym or the Elite Four and champion. This game you can you're not given Rayquaza. Most of the time you're given you're given Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Kyogre, whatever. This game you have to go out of your way to get Rayquaza. So that makes it a bit harder because I remember when I played through, at least when I was very young, I didn't have a legendary Pokemon. All I had was my Swampert, and it was a bit tough. I was running out of moves trying to get to the the Elite Four and the champion, so it definitely made it a bit harder than other Elite Four and champions. Which was my fault. Going through the game now, it's I know to capture Rayquaza. I'm much better at the game now. The other thing I like about the game too is all of the post-game content. The Battle Frontier is a great addition, which I'm surprised they keep not adding. But it's a great addition, even if it's a little cheap. I was never able to get all the gold symbols, it's one of the silver symbols. A lot of legendaries to catch. Everyone talks about the Reggies. How would you have figured out? Who would think to read Braille, especially reading Braille? Braille is obviously for blind people. Blind people are probably don't play video games. At least they would not know to read that. So having Braille for people who can see. I question the logic of it, but still, who would have thought to have a Braille to capture the Reggies and the other legendaries you can catch? All that fun stuff to do. Because this is where I feel like capturing, even like in Gen 2, capturing come to the legendaries, it feels like a bit of an adventure. Because as we'll see later on, catching legendaries becomes less and less fun. Another thing too with this game that definitely adds to the appeal of it was the cloning glitch. I I don't remember the exact details of it, but I remember, if you're like moving Pokemon and then you quit your game as it's saving, you can clone Pokemon, which I did use because I remember in Gen 4 games you can move your Pokemon over. So instead of destroying my Emerald save and having no more depleting my Pokemon reserve, I would clone like a bunch of you know Rayquaza, Kyogre, Groudon on my starters. I would clone them and bring them up to Platinum and have all those Pokemon. So that was fun. Another thing too with Emerald is that this is like the first game with no real rival. I know May and Wally are a rival. I kind of forget Wally's in the game and May's not really a rival. She battles you, but not really there. All in all, Emerald was a good, fun game. Definitely one of the peaks of Pokemon, so I'm going to put in the A tier. Next game on the list is Platinum. Again, the definitive way, in my opinion, to experience, the Sinnoh region, at least this version of the Sinnoh region. This is the first game to have the physical special splits, which always surprised me after the fact because I'd always assumed that was the case, even when I played the Gen 3 games, just because it made more sense in my opinion. Like as a kid, oh, there's different stats, so I would assume that, I don't know, certain moves would, Fire Punch would be a physical move, but I was wrong. That was not always the case. So this is the first start of like really, I know I said Gen 3 was the start of modern Pokemon, but Gen 4 is I guess the real start of modern Pokemon with it's kind of what every game is based off of now, at least mechanically. Another thing I love about the Platinum games is I really love the region. I don't know, I love the large mountain in the center, just always I don't know, always there. I feel like you can always see it if you were playing the game anywhere in the region. The forests, the ruins. I love the history, how it's incorporated into the mythology of not just Sinnoh, but the whole world. And I like the mythology stuff of it especially. That's why I love Arceus so much. I like a lot of the Pokemon. I know there are a lot of like uh, not branched, cross-gen evolutions, and it helps give some older, weaker Pokemon a fresh coat of paint and more reason to use them, which I like. Uh, Another thing I love about Mount Coronet too is not just the mountains, but I love how it's kind of one big dungeon. We don't really get dungeons anymore in modern Pokemon, so going back and playing, it's like wow, this is kind of fun, not having to just go through long corridors. You actually have to explore the game and use HM moves, which I know is controversial, but I'm definitely more on the pro HM side. Team Galactic is a good villainous team, even though their plan is basically just to kill everyone. At least they kind of feel like a threat, even though if it's a little kooky. It's like, yeah, we're gonna wipe out the whole world. Who cares? I'm gonna capture, the Pokemon gods and wipe out the world. A little crazy, but it's still good fun. And especially with Platinum, I like the inclusion of Giratina, even if he's not always the main villain. I just like the fact that I don't know if they ever touch upon this, but he's like the evil Pokemon, like Pokemon Satan in the way. He's a bit of a serpent, controls not the underworld, but the distortion world, which is always fun. Which is, little, it's not, I think it's a tad overrated because you only explore it once in Platinum, but it's still, fun going through, getting sucked into a new world, the wonky physics and all that stuff. You wish you could see it again. And of course, remakes don't cover that, but it is what it is. The new region, not a new region, like the post-game area, the battle zone is great. The Stark Mountain quest, capturing Jesus. Going after the Stark Mountain quest, capturing Sharon. That's all good fun stuff. There's a lot of rematches you can do. A lot of legendary Pokemon to catch, which is fun. And capturing them, at least, again, I like how capturing them feels like an adventure. You have to at least put some effort into capturing your legendary Pokemon. Like going, even if it's not too much effort, like to capture Darkrai, you have to go to I forget the island, next to Crysalia's Island. And, it's a bit of a roaming Pokemon, but still just little things that you can do to help make capturing the Pokemon fun and memorable, which they don't do anymore. Like I mentioned with Emerald the Clone Glitch, that Pal Park, which is fun. Bringing back my old cloned Pokemon to, have all the legendaries I could have. Obviously, the Battle Frontier was great. You know, I don't remember being as cheap as Emerald, but I was never able to get all the gold symbols. Got all the silver symbols, but still good fun. A lot of stuff to do. This is the first game to introduce Looker, who I guess they don't have it in the games anymore. Maybe he's too old, but I remember Looker was a fun side character. Barry was definitely a interesting rival. Not as memorable as Blue, but not as boring as May or Wally, so it was a fun addition. Underground was there. I didn't care too much for the Underground. Wasn't as much to do. All in all, Platinum was definitely one of my more favorite Pokemon games. A lot of stuff to do. Cleaned up a lot of stuff mechanically. A lot of my favorite Pokemon. I know people always talk about, no fire types, but never really bothered me. Platinum kind of fixed that issue. It's a colder region. Why should there be as much fire types? All in all, Platinum is the first game I'm going to put in the S tier. One of the definitive Pokemon games that I always recommend someone to play. So, next on the list is Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and I know it's not an unpopular opinion, but it's obviously the best remake they've done. I mean, I'm not sure you could argue otherwise, but it's definitely the best remake in my opinion. It's the definitive way to experience the Johto region. Remakes now, they only take the game that they're remaking and will refuse to add any content from, the upper version, which still boggles the mind because, the upper version usually improves the base game, so you want to pull from that, maybe improve that. No, these idiots don't do that. There's a lot of crystal content. There's the Suicune quest, some of the crystal fixes in the game. Obviously, you wish they fixed more mistakes, like maybe the level curve in Johto. It's not the best, how weak a lot of the gym leaders are and trainers, but it is what it is. The big thing about Crystal is the post game. Now they added the Battle Frontier, a lot of fun legendaries to catch. Probably the best event Pokemon in the game. Like there's that whole Celebi, finding out about Silver's dad, because that never made sense in the original Crystal. I don't think they ever hinted at, at least that I remember, Silver being Giovanni's son. It was more Gen 3 than this event that really, told you straight up that, yeah, Silver is Giovanni's son. So that's a nice addition. It's such a, like, you fall in love with the game just knowing how much detail they put into the game and how nice they made it. Like I said, there's a lot of other rematches, so you can rematch all the gym leaders and a bunch of other trainers with better, stronger teams. Walking Pokemon, I'm surprised they never introduced it in other 2D sprite-based games. They get it more in the 3D games. It's a little more difficult. But I just, it's a nice little thing having your Pokemon follow you. I don't know, I like seeing it. One of the coolest things too is the GB sounds. Again, these things don't add much to the game, but it's just the little details, like how much care and effort they put into the game. I feel like really charms you. A lot of extra missions and challenges to catch. There's so much to do, and the Bouquet-athlon was probably one of my favorite because contests suck. I mean, let's be honest. I don't like contests. They're not really intuitive. It uses more obscure features. The Poké-athlon is just a bunch of mini games, but I don't know, they're fun to me, and I spent a lot of time doing that, along with the Battle Frontier. Like I said, this is probably one of the games I spent the most time in actually playing. XMI might have my highest runtime, but that's because of the Wonder Trade, just kind of sitting there, trading Pokemon to get a good one. This I spent a lot of time playing. It's definitely one of my favorites. I think it's a must play for most people. Maybe not the best playthrough of the main game, but the post game and the replay content is probably where it's at its highest. So again, a lot of praise for it. Definitely putting in the S tier. Another must play Pokemon game. And the best remake overall. Not a controversial opinion, pretty much I think it's unanimous, but so next on the list is Black and White, the start of Gen 5. And I know this game was controversial because you can only use the new Gen 5 Pokemon, and this caused a lot of people to whine, and it's very unfortunate because it was a fun addition, unique. They were trying to recreate the Gen 1 experience, having a new set of Pokemon you never seen or used before, so it kind of forces you to use new Pokemon. Part of the reason it never bothered me too is that I tend to always use new Pokemon anyway when I play through a game. Yeah, I could read, Torterra is my favorite. I could always, try to capture Torterra or other Pokemon that I like and reuse them every single game, but I find that to be boring. I like to use new Pokemon to discover new favorites, discover new Pokemon that I like to use. So this change never bothered me, but it bothered so many people that we never got it again. Yay. But speaking of the Pokemon, A lot of them got unnecessary hate that I don't really feel like was deserved. Yeah, it's kind of funny too, the reception of this game, how when it came out, I remember there being a lot more hate than praise. And it was always over dumb things like, oh, there's a garbage Pokemon, as if, garbage Pokemon's out of the question. We have Pokemon based on so many weird things, like why is Pokemon have garbage, where we draw the line, or the ice cream Pokemon. I remember all the hate Vanillix got, but now we have, a cake Pokemon. I mean, is that really any better? No, but I don't see, Alcremie getting anywhere near the amount of hate that Vanillix got, or Garbodor got, or Trubbish. It just felt very artificial, like, the Gen 1ers just, were, because they couldn't play as Charizard, they lost their mind. I don't know, I guess I'm still salty about that, because Gen 5 was, probably the best generation, and that we, as you'll see, my opinion changed greatly over the new generations. But this also, one more thing about the Pokemon is I felt like this is one of the first regions that, because all the previous 4 games are based on Japan, so that's just like the first region to have Pokemon really tied to the region outside of Japan. I always think of, LGM, like the alien Pokemon based, directly on Area 51 for in the US. That's a little fun reference here. Some of the downsides are that the rivals in Black and White are very boring. Like Charon was, too analytical, and Bianca was like her parents didn't want her to become a trainer, whatever. I don't really find that all interesting or engaging. It's just a distraction. One thing I find a little too overrated in this game is the story. I've never really understood the obsession with the story. I think it's talking about a topic or question that shouldn't be addressed in Pokemon to begin with. Like, should Pokemon be your partners or not? I don't really think Pokemon should even address that issue. So I've always found that, oh, it tackles mature issues. Like, what's mature about it? All we get was actually, who cares about the story? The villainous team is trying to separate you for evil reasons. It's I've always found it overrated. It's not something Pokemon should explore. Like, especially in the other games, like you read like the Canalave City Library and Platinum, talking about Pokemon like being your partner, how they want to be a partner, they like battling. And this game does a bit of a 180, saying, well, should you be battling with your Pokemon? It could be animal abuse and all that stuff. I don't know. I don't think Pokemon's capable of tackling that issue. Not that it should either. I mean, it's a child game with battling animals. I don't think it's really increased animal abuse, but whatever. I like the seasons gimmick. The seasons having multiple seasons that kind of change the landscape throughout the year. I just wish the rotation was a bit shorter. I think the rotation's a month per season. I kind of wish it was more of a week to get you through the seasons a bit sooner. Having to wait, 4 months to go through the whole year is a bit much in my opinion, but still a nice gimmick. I like that TMs are finally unlimited. In previous games, you were basically given one TM if you couldn't buy it. So if you want to teach one Pokemon Earthquake, you better make sure you chose that right one. Otherwise, you're gonna have to. You never could teach that Pokemon that TM again. So you're stuck, which was annoying. This game had animated sprites, which added so much personality to the Pokemon themselves too. It wasn't anything special. They were just slightly moving around, but it was still a nice thing to see. The triple and rotation battles were a fun little gimmick, even if I didn't really use them all that much. It's a little fun to use. They had the battle subway, which it's okay. It's just it was visually cool, but it's basically just the battle tower. Very nice post game though, and like one of them was helping Looker with the 7 sieges. A lot of stuff to do in the post game. Very fun. And it's kind of, I think, one of my favorite spots in all Pokemon is Castelia City. It's, I know it's based off New York City, but not as gross or disgusting as New York City, so that's nice. All in all, a very good game. So obviously I'm going to put it in the S tier. Probably put it here. Very good game. So obviously, Black and White 2, it's the first true sequel we've ever gotten. And obviously it's outstanding. It's easily, I think, the best Pokemon game ever. The regions expanded. One of the things I like with, especially Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Black and White 2 is like how the region changes in the 2 years. It's nothing crazy, but now we have a new champion. There's new gym leaders. People are doing different things. It's just kind of nice to see. So I like the expanded region. Your rival is again mid. The story is okay, but this time it's more of a directly villainous. They're gonna just destroy the region with Kyrium. Something I never got to is how come Colress never gets in trouble? Like, he's considered a good guy now, which I've always thought was kind of weird because remember Black and White too, like, wasn't he like one of the leaders of the villainous team trying to destroy the region? He just gets off scot-free. I'm probably too much thought into it, but I just always thought that was weird. Like, he tried to destroy the region, and it's like, oh, I get, well, he was doing it for, he joined for good reasons, or, for scientific reasons, therefore it's okay. He was complicit with all these crimes. But what helps make Black 2 White 2 so special, to me, is really the post game. You've got much more. You got so many side quests that can help Colress, and just a bunch of million things to give, like an achievement system. You help Alder's grandson with that little side quest. I got achievements. The Pokemon World Tournament is definitely one of the cooler things they've ever done. Bringing back basically every gym leader, champion to battle them in this tournament all the time. Very fun. Spent tons of hours going through that. Such a good game. You really wish Pokemon, they've got the ability to make these good games, at least they had, but now they just make trash. And this is probably the last game, too, to have cool event Pokemon. Like Meloetta, Victini. Nothing too crazy, but it's annoying now when you're just given all these legendary Pokemon, you're given these event Pokemon. I know it's more work to integrate them into the world and the story, but I hate. Not that I hate, but it's not fun. Oh, here's a wormhole. You can capture Dialga. It's like, okay, well, I like Dialga. I want to capture him, but is this really fun? And the answer is no. This is where it feels fun to capture legendary Pokemon. There's always like some side quests you have to go on, like to capture the Three Musketeer tree or whatever they're called. It's fun having to hunt them down, try to capture them. It's fun trying to hunt down the genies, all that stuff. Even if it's not the most difficult thing in the world, at least it's more memorable. I can't remember how to capture some of the new Pokemon in the new games now because they just give them to you most of the time. So this is probably the last, well, was the last great Pokemon game for a very, very, very long time. I think this is probably the best Pokemon game they've ever made, and it's a shame that we'll never see anything close like it ever again. Because now we're going to get to X and Y, which was the first 3D Pokemon game, and it was extremely disappointing for a multitude of reasons. I think the 3D itself is just disappointing. Pokemon, they've always had very linear routes, but they've added over time, like you saw from Red and Blue, the simple routes, to Black and White, the more complex routes, with little offshoots and little hidden areas to find and explore. That's probably why I like HM moves, because it helps with exploration, even though there's a different way we could do it, which I'll get to in a bit, but the world was just incredibly disappointing. It was basically a 2D game, but oh, now your models were in 3D, and the world's even more bland because we could do everything in 3D, which was annoying. 3D models, I know people like seeing them, but they just feel like such a downgrade. I don't know, it was with the sprite work in Black and White, but they just seemed a little more animated, a little more alive. They're moving a bit more. The 3D models, they're like desaturated, they aren't moving as much. It feels like such a downgrade. I don't know. And, Team Flare was boring. I mean, it's like, oh, there's some ugliness in the world, so to get rid of all the ugliness was to kill everything. It's like, okay, alright, whatever. They tried to frame it as like some sort of philosophical thing, but it's just, you could easily poke holes in it. This game is the start of Kanto pandering because of how poorly the Black and White games were received, Gen 5 games. We've now non-stop Kanto pandering, and thank you for ruining that. Because people couldn't accept the fact they couldn't they couldn't have Charizard in one of their playthroughs, so now we're stuck with Kanto pandering for the rest of Pokemon's existence. This was also an incredibly easy game, and I've always found Pokemon to be on the easier side. That doesn't bother me, but it's at least challenging enough where you have to at least put some thought into, especially, the peak Gen 3 through 5. But now they've made it brain dead easy. This is the first game to have the full experience share, which, again, am a fan of it, but they just never seem to implement it well, where they never have the experience share, or at least the trainers you fight, have teams that kind of match your fully leveled up team. They have like, oh, here's the gym leader with 3 Pokemon, each Pokemon only knows 3 moves. Like, oh, great, so every battle's going to be a cakewalk. Because I hate grinding. That's the one thing about the previous games. There's a lot of grinding, which is never fun to do. No one likes grinding. People say they do, they don't. So having the experience share, I think, is an overall net good. It just, unfortunately, they're too lazy to balance the game. Like, oh, here's the experience share, but we're still going to have the same old design philosophy. which is obviously makes the game incredibly easy. I think you have like I forget it was a 4 or 5 rivals in the game, which are all cakewalks, all idiots. They're very easy to beat. And like something that's so easy, like the gym leaders. Was it is it Wolfric's like the last gym leader or one of the last? And he doesn't even have a full team. They don't even Mega Evolve. It's so stupid. And speaking of Mega Evolution, oh, one more thing about the easiness. They give you a Mega Lucario and 2 starters. Like, as if the experience didn't make the game easy enough. They give you 3 very powerful Pokemon to begin the game, as if it couldn't be easier enough. But Mega Evolution was, in my opinion, the best gimmick they've had since they've been introducing, generational gimmicks. I know it was probably hard to maintain because, it's very not personal, but it's designed for that Pokemon. Like, you're not getting, a General Mega, you're getting Mega Charizard, Mega, Beedrill. My Beedrill came to mind, but you're getting Mega Lucario. Like, if you like that Pokemon, now they're getting an extra form, an extra way to like that Pokemon, extra way to use them. Other generational gimmicks just aren't the same, which I get makes it more widespread use, but it feels less special to that Pokemon and less unique too. So I think I'm in the majority where Megas were my favorite because of that, you know, appeal to that one specific Pokemon, but we're never going to see it again. It's too much effort for them, which of course that's how everything is now. And again, very barren post game, which was very annoying. The whole Zygarde subplot we never really resolved. They pick up a generation later, which is stupid. The only thing to do was like that Looker mission in Lumiose City with that girl and the battle Mason, which is basically another battle tower. This is such a disappointing game for not just because of the game itself, which I did not like, but the start of the downfall of Pokemon. It's not even the fact that I can look at maybe it was a bump on there. Like, no, this was the start of like the dark ages for Pokemon. We're still in the dark ages, and I don't think we're ever going to get out of it because of how incompetent the developers at Game Freak are. So obviously, I'm just not fond of this game. I'm putting in the D tier. Very bad. I really don't recommend playing it. Maybe ZA will give you a reason to go back to the Kalos region, but in my opinion, no real reason to ever go back or play these games. It was just so disappointing. Even the region was bland. It's such a huge step down from Black and White 2. Like, there's never been a bigger drop off in the series. So next game on the list is Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and this is where I was alluding to before, the disappointing remakes, and this is again, there's like a back-to-back combo of disappointing. X and Y was incredibly disappointed, but Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphires were really it hit me where like I guess Pokemon's going downhill because they messed up a remake. I mean, how do you mess up a remake? They included only content from Ruby and Sapphire because in the name it says Ruby and Sapphire, but they only included content from that. When the previous 2 remakes included content from not just the games they were said they were remaking, but also the 3rd version. Because why wouldn't you include the improvements from Emerald? I don't know. They never gave a real reason why they wouldn't do that. I know they talked about like why they include the Battle Frontier because, well, kids these days have short attention spans, and we feel like they're not going to play it because we don't want to put in the effort if they're not going to play it, which is it's so lazy, it's so defeatist. I hate that kind of attitude. And, it's basically been their philosophy going forward. Why bother? We're going to make money. They're not going to play it. Why bother putting more effort? It's just sick. And, it's basically been like the death spiral of Pokemon ever since, Gen 6. Yeah, not fun. And this had introduced a lot of Gen 6 gimmicks, had a lot of Mega Evolution. It had the experience share, but they didn't balance any of the teams. So basically you're playing through the game with the over-leveled team, and you're fighting trainers with, they're older, bad teams, but also it's like easier teams. Like, it's the same Ruby and Sapphire teams, less Pokemon. It's just mind-boggling. They couldn't throw in a few extra Pokemon that give the game any semblance of challenge. It's just very disappointing. The only thing people praise is the Delta episode, which is kind of cool, riding Rayquaza into space to defeat the Deoxys, but it's hard to justify one cool event with the rest of the game being one giant disappointment. Like, and I get it, people, like the game, but to me this has just always been a huge disappointment. Another thing, too, is this game is what really hit me in the face with legendaries being no longer fun to catch. You still had the the Reggie trio catching other Hoenn legendaries, but they have the Hoopa portals where you can capture Dialga, Lugia, and all these other legendary Pokemon. Just as like, this isn't fun anymore. I'm just soaring around the sky looking for portals to capture legendary Pokemon. It's not as fun anymore. It's removed so much of the fun the games had that it's not there anymore. Very sad. You hate to see it. And obviously, I was not high in these games, so I'm putting them also in the D tier. More fun than X and Y, but uh, incredibly disappointing. And that's what also annoys me too. That I don't really feel like there's a reason to play Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire over Pokemon Emerald. People say, "Oh, it's got the physical special split," but I'd take not having the physical special split over the extra platinum content, the replayability of that game. I don't care that I don't have any megas. I don't care about all that stuff. It's a more fun game because you have to remember a lot of people play these games are more like me than the people you might watch other YouTube videos on who replay the game, once every few months, once every year. They're constantly doing runs of these games. Those aren't the majority, so those people's opinions don't represent the majority. I feel like my opinions, not just because they're unbiased and correct, but I feel like they represent closer to what people who played the games are more likely to experience. Probably. Maybe not. So, next game on the list, there are some differences between Sun and Moon, but I just feel like it's going to be a lot of overlaps. I'm going to talk about more about just Sun and Moon. Because I know the big differences, they added like extra content. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is always the story. I kind of, even though there's tons and tons and tons of dialogue dumps, at least I like the overall idea of the story from Sun and Moon. It felt, not really end of the world. It was just some mom who got obsessed with her research and went crazy and she was killing Pokemon, threatened to kill her kids. And, it's kind of tragic, too, how she, became poisoned. We don't know if she ever fully healed. Because like, the Ultra games was like, oh, she was like, I think it was actually mind controlled or something. Like, she just got a little too obsessed. A little more, I guess, PG. Like, the base Sun and Moon had her, I don't know, I like the little, I don't know, I like it. It's a little tragic, little family story about, the two siblings, Gladiator and Lusamine, not Lusamine, Lily, fighting all that stuff. A little more fun. Yeah, but the base games, they focus more about Ultra Space and the Ultra Wormholes. So instead of fighting Lusamine controlled by Nihilego, the Ultra Beast, you fight Ultra Necrozma. People say he's difficult, but again, I didn't really have much problem with him. Your team's so over-leveled, you've got your over-leveled starter. It wasn't really all that difficult. I don't know if people always focus on that. I mean, Ultra Necrozma's okay as a villain. He's just looking for light and trying to get revenge on people. Whatever. I don't know. The whole concept of like alien Pokemon, I was okay with Deoxys, and I guess Clefairy too to some extent. But I don't know. All these Ultra Wormhole Pokemon starting to lose me a bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm too much of a boomer for Pokemon, but starting to lose me with all these weird Pokemon additions. I know it's their way of maybe exercising their creativity, getting a little, weirder Pokemon out there, but it was a little weird. I found the Z move gimmick to be incredibly boring. I went through both games without using it once because I didn't care for it. It's just like an instant kill move. One move that's really extra powerful. I'm like, you're already so powerful. The game's already so easy. Why do you need even more of an extra win button? I played the game without using it. This game had no more HM moves, which people see that's a net win, but I guess that the way to look at it is I've always liked HM moves because that's always a way to facilitate more exploration. Oh, you can't explore this cave now because you need this HM move down the road. Now, with no HM moves, you just call Pokemon out of the blue to fly around. It's just not as fun, and the games have just become no longer fun to explore. Like, what you see is what you get. There's no extra hidden areas, no tunnels or caves for this one specific Pokemon. There's no extra challenges. It's very sad because I know it's deliberate because in the minds of the developers probably, well, we want to make sure if the player's gonna, no, we're not gonna create an area the player's not gonna see. They're gonna see everything they need to see, and that's it. Which is a very sad way to go through a game, but that's how they're designing these games now. So, because I've always thought with HMs is that they're called hidden moves, or at least in my opinion, they've always been implied moves. Like Charizard has wings, he can fly. Do you need to teach it the move fly to ride on its back? I always feel like these moves should be implicit. Like, you can have a list of like multiple HM moves your Pokemon they know just because they know. Like, you need to teach Pokemon separately, Surf, Dive, and Waterfall. They should know how to do that already. Like, if you're riding on a Mantine, which is the Mantine surfing, you shouldn't need to teach a Mantine surf. It can already swim. Like, you should be able to go on its back without teaching a move. Like, these moves should be implicit. So you can still have these Pokemon knowing these HM moves without wasting move slots. Like, oh, if you have no water type Pokemon on your team, you probably can't explore on the water. But if you bring a Mantine with you, you could. So I feel like it's a balance of old HM moves without taking up extra move slots. It always made sense to me, even as a little kid. I've thought of this. It always made more sense why, like in Platinum, there's the HM Slave Bidoof, and there's so many HM moves. Because I know it kills team building, which I get all that, so I feel like my solutions always made the most sense instead of having just random Pokemon pop out of nowhere. It's not as fun. Like, oh, a Tauros pops out of nowhere. You could ride it for like 2 seconds, and then it feels very impersonal, not as fun. Having your Pokemon do these moves, I think, is always going to be better than calling up a random Tauros Charizard. I think it's Lapras in this game, and Machamp to go push boulders around. It's like, it's not as fun. The Island Challenge is an okay. I mean, I'm kind of surprised it took them this long to depart from the rank and file gym challenge. It's okay. Kind of the same thing, really. Just more gyms, in all honesty. Never thought it was like that much of a win to depart from the gym challenge, but it's whatever. The Rainbow Rocket post-game is incredibly stupid and boring. It gets overhyped because it's like, oh, Gen 1, we see Giovanni, and he has a Mewtwo. It's like, that's it. I mean, you're fighting parallel dimensions versions of other evil team leaders. It's not something I've ever really cared about. And, you're just fighting these people, like, one after another. There's no intricate story. Maybe they take over. Each one's takes over Island of Alola. Like, they take over the Aether Foundation for, like, 2 seconds, and you kick them out almost immediately. It's not really anything special. People overhype it a lot. It's not quality post-game content. But there is some other post-game content that's better. I mean, capturing Zygarde was a little more tedious in the original Sun and Moon. Capturing him now is a little more fun. Now he gets this 100% form, which is another reason why X and Y is disappointing. They couldn't even include, their own legendary Pokemon story in the game. That's included in the Sun and Moon games, and Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. It's so stupid. There was the battle tree. It was cool to see, Red and Blue's older forms, but I think it's incredibly cheap, because I remember playing through the battle tree. I always played through these just a little bit to complete part of the challenge, and I'm pretty sure the game cheats, because I remember I would have my team, and I felt like they were picking Pokemon specifically to counter my team, and I picked the team that only had, I think only water types, because it was easy to get a hold of, and a few people in, all of a sudden I'm facing teams nothing but grass and electric types. Like, they were definitely cheating, which I did not appreciate. Like, I'm okay with the challenge, but deliberately picking teams to beat my team feels like cheating, so I did not appreciate that. All in all, no, these games were fun. Better post-game, better story, even though if there's nothing but, that's something to like a slog of tutorials, and just a little more, not as easy as X and Y, but definitely a okay experience, putting them in the B tier. Worth playing. Not the be-all end-all, but I would say definitely worth playing. So, the next game on the list is the Let's Go games, which I've actually never played, specifically because, again, I don't see the point of playing it. I touched upon this in our Brilliant Diamond Shining Pro review. Why am I going to play a remake with less content than the original, or at least Fire Red and Leaf Green? Why make these games? Who are you appealing to? I know it's appealing to the Gen 1ers, people playing Pokemon Go, and of course these games always sell well, but for someone who's played the games for a long time, I don't see the point in playing it. It's the remake with less content, yay. I mean, it's stupid. It's not worth it at all. I know people might disagree, because I think people are obsessed with like shiny hunting or whatever. It's always easy to get shiny Pokemon. Guess what? I don't care about shiny Pokemon. I care about the game, the post game, and it's so barren. Like, it's just mind-boggling. So I'm gonna put an F tier. I feel comfortable putting it here. It's not a game ever worth spending your time on. So next on the list is Sword and Shield, and obviously this has the Dexit controversy, where they cut the national dex from the game, which I remember the excuses that they gave, where it's like, oh, it's difficult in game balance, which was a complete load of crap. It's pure laziness. They don't want to put the effort in anymore. You know, you could say, yeah, it's like we're nearing 1,000 Pokemon at the time. I know it wasn't 1,000, but they were nearing it. But there's just no reason, because obviously in like Sun and Moon, you can't capture every Pokemon in the game, but models exist. You can transfer them from Pokemon Bank, wherever the transfer service was, into the game to use, which is fine. You don't have to have them every Pokemon game available in the store. That's never been the case, but you're always able to bring them in from previous games and all that stuff. First game to tell you, no, you can't do that, which is always very stupid. I've never understood what people even defend Game Freak. It's pure laziness, and just there's no real reason to do this. Like, every excuse they gave was a lie or just out of laziness. Again, I don't understand why they defend them. Story's a bit better than previous games. Still tons of, text dumps and all that stuff. But it's still, I think the story's better just because of, they tell you Leon, he's so unbeatable, and like, I feel like it gives you at least the motivation to want to beat him. Your rival's a bumbling idiot, and I feel bad for beating him. I don't know, these far back, not the edge, but at least the motivation to beat these snotty kids. And the other guy was a bead, he was a snot, so it gives you at least a little motivation to beat them. The gym battles are very, over the top, kind of fun to do. Just visual stuff, but it's kind of fun. And the Dynamax, at least it's visually cool in the giant soccer arenas. Team Yell is incredibly stupid. I don't know why they had to include an evil team. It felt like they're just checking off the box. Like, every game's got, gym battles, starters, evil team, check. I didn't see the reason to include it. Again, it felt like they're just doing a checklist. Dynamax was, I don't know, it was okay as in the gimmick. I mean, part of it was, it definitely feels more, you feel more attached because you see your Pokemon go so big, and some of them have special forms, but it's not as, as impersonal as the Z moves, but it's not as cool as Megas. It's, I don't know. If I were to rank them, it's Megas, Dynamax, Terastal, and Z moves. Z moves are just so boring. It's such a waste of a gimmick. This is slightly better. The wild area was, at least in the base game, it was okay. I mean, all you can do is ride around your bike. Pokemon pop up, there's no draw distance for this. The Pokemon pop up like 10 feet in front of you. Is, again, Pokemon showing their incompetence when it comes to just programming. I mean, they can't Pokemon appear at least a little further away. I know you gotta save on resource and all that stuff, but when they pop up right in front of you, it's very jarring. Post game is basically non-existent. You have to pay for your post game, which I'm not a fan of. But at least the post game it's fun enough. The Isle of Armor one, the area is nice. The story about Kubfu, I don't care about. If you like Kubfu, I guess is more involved. It's all about training Kubfu, and you got your little rival. But I don't know. It was fine. Region was nice to explore because it's just one big wild area, which was nice, but good. It was good. But the Crown Tundra was much better. I like the little small stories, because this is where I like, you have to hunt down, you help, you help Calyrex, you help find, you hunt down the Regis, you hunt down, you go to Split Decision Ruins, you have to hunt down the 3 regional birds. I don't know, it's a little more fun, at least exploration-wise. You have to at least do a little more, it's a little more involved getting these Pokemon, these legendaries that they introduced, which I've always appreciated, just a little bit, because it's more memorable. I remember getting these Pokemon. I don't remember, I have so many legendaries in, like, Sun and Moon, but I can't remember anything specific about getting them, because it's all exactly the same way. You go through these ultra wormholes, you pop up, oh, y'all go appear out of nowhere, and then you can capture them. That's the end of it. The Dynamax adventures, like I said, the generic way of getting them is horrible. I hate it. You have to rely on your AI, and of course they're the most incompetent people in the world, constantly, boosting themselves, not fighting, and just picking weak Pokemon to get killed over and over again. You Pokemon just get knocked out, but they get knocked out 4 times and you get kicked out of the dungeon. I hate relying on these incompetent computers, and You know, you could make them more competent. You could, Game Freak, but they're not technically capable of doing that, as we see the case in so many of their bad decisions. So if you were to include, base game Sword and Shield, not really all that great, but I feel, I know you have to pay for it, but the DLC kind of makes it a much better game and at least softens the game for me, in my opinion. So I'm going to put it in controversially in B tier. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's. I didn't hate it as much. It's easy to capture a lot of Pokemon, a lot of convenience, but also a lot of its issues. Maybe I could drop it down a tier, but that's I feel like. But these games are just old, and I don't really see the point replaying them. Solid. Maybe I could drop it down. Yeah, no reason to replay these games. Just okay, good, very good, great, very bad, and just a failure of a game. Speaking of failures, next game on the list is Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Remember in our review, I was the one who did not play it again. Because I think the three perspective was Colin, who played the original, Daniel, who never played the original, and then me, who didn't play it because I'm too stubborn and I don't really. I don't think it's controversial to say it's the worst mainline game because it's just a straight up remake of Diamond and Pearl. And Diamond and Pearl, I know technically they're old games. I mean, they came out over 15 years ago, but they don't feel old mechanically. They don't really need a fresh coat of paint. I mean, the sprite work was good. There's no reason to remake these games as they did. You could have added the platinum content. You could have done so much more with these games, but I don't know if it's a mandate from Ilka or a mandate from Game Freak to Ilka, or they were just being lazy. But it's such a joke, and it was a very buggy game too. Like you remake a mostly clean, not buggy DS game, you make it even worse. Like it's such a complete joke how they messed up this game so badly. They cut all the platinum content. People say, "Oh, well, they had the rematches were there." I'm like, "Okay, great." Cynthia's rematch platinum team was there, but they cut all the Giratina stuff, all the improvements they made. It's so stupid, and I don't care about the Green Underground. It's not worth all of the things they cut. Such a disappointment. Which is kind of funny too, because Following is easily the best Pokemon game since Black 2, White 2. Yeah, I liked Legends Arceus a lot. And part of what made it a complete surprise too was how low my expectations were. Like especially after, years and years of bad Pokemon games. Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl was such a disaster. To see this game, it was such a complete shock and surprise. I loved it so much. I mean, I love again, Sinnoh was my favorite region, so I liked going back, seeing it, 200 years ago, whatever the time period was. I loved, the again ties to the mythology, the way they tackle all that stuff. I liked it made catching Pokemon actually fun, which has always been surprising. Like catching Pokemon's always felt like tedious and a chore. Like, like for example, I've almost completed the Pokédex in Sword and Shield, but a lot of it's just let me hunt down this Pokemon, keep throwing Pokeballs at it until I capture it. In Arceus, it feels a little more dynamic. You have to actually, maybe sneak up behind it and throw your Pokeball, throw a smoke screen, a little more effort to catch. Like that actual catching part is more involved. And now you feel like a character. Usually, you've always felt like a vehicle to your Pokemon. You never felt like a character. Now that you can take damage and you're more involved, you can move and stuff. It definitely feels more like you're the actual playable character now. And like even the battle system changes. I liked. I liked the not so much the different styles, but I liked how it changed. Where now faster Pokemon getting more hits, but now you get more hits into if you're a slower Pokemon. So now it helps me more defensive as opposed to just really fast. Because speed's always been the best, stat in Pokemon. You know, it's so great. It was such a complete surprise. Like I was actually able to complete the Pokédex without having to do any trades, which was nice. They had the link cable items, so you don't have to trade in game. It was so nice. Such a fun game, capturing Pokemon. It's hard to. Again, maybe it was just after decades of being abused by Pokemon, like given a crumb of something that's not terrible. I was just, maybe I was a battered wife or something. But it was just so nice to actually have a good Pokemon game that I was happy to play and replay, as opposed to just like feeling embarrassed that I played, X and Y. It was so nice, and the origin forms were a miss in my opinion. I know what they were going for. They were creating Arceus's image, but they don't look good. Like, how come, Giratina gets that cool serpent form, and then these two get like some weird in-between version of their forms in Arceus? But it is what it is. And I've always thought, like, this is where I get disappointed because the legend plate for Arceus feels like the perfect item for it. Always views Judgment. It always, switches its type and becomes super effective. It feels perfect for like the God Pokemon that should have like an overpowered ability, in my opinion. And of course they cut it, and I'll probably never see it again, which is disappointing. They keep introducing stuff they never will bring back. That's also because of this game too. It's why I don't know, I'm cautiously optimistic for ZA. Or I don't know. I mean, I've been burned too many times where I probably shouldn't get my hopes up. But if it's anything like this game, I'll probably give it a chance. Unless I see the reviews day one, it's terrible again, which wouldn't be surprising, but it's possible. So this game, I'm putting it very, very high. I love this game so very much. So last, but certainly least, is Scarlet and Violet. And again, this one, I feel like, after how much he loved Arceus, I remember Dana was getting excited because how much he liked Arceus, he thought this game would be great. And I was, a little more pessimistic one as I am because I don't trust Game Freak, as time and time again has proven they're incompetent, and like we covered in our review, I really didn't like it. The game was incredibly buggy. They botched so many things with, it's an open world, but not really because you basically have to follow a gated path. They don't, like, you can't go to the gym really in any order because you won't be the right level. They don't have any level scaling. It's just mind-boggling stuff. I don't understand how they can't implement. It's not difficult. Like, we're not asking to have a game where it's like, oh, it's like Breath of the Wild but with Pokemon. Some people do ask for that, but I've never asked for that because I think it's unrealistic. But level curve is not unrealistic. Games do that all the time. I'm pretty sure they've done it before. They can do it. It's doable, but they're just so incompetent and lazy. They can't do it. It's mind-boggling. And this like the story was boring. Like tons of text. It's like, oh, it's about bullying, and I don't care. Another thing too is like the other Pokemon games. Every game you play as a little kid, but you don't look all that young. There's at least enough left to the imagination where it's not as distracting as this game. This game's always felt incredibly distracting because you're as a little kid dressed in a school uniform, and as a grown adult, I can't say I like playing as a kid in a school uniform. When you play as Red or an Arceus, yeah, you're a kid, but again, you don't. I don't know. You can maybe imagine yourself being a bit older. This game's like you're such a explicit image of a school kid. Like I don't know. I don't. It's not as fun. I know that's more of a Japanese thing where they like reminiscing about their high school years from what I've seen online. I don't. I mean, I'm an adult. I find it very jarring. And again, like the trend of that's the thing about Arceus too. Like to keep going about how great it was. The game, because of the new battle system, ended up being actually a challenge. Like the final battle was actually a challenge, having to fight 8 Pokemon in a row, and your Pokemon kept getting knocked out. Like I actually lost. I even haven't lost to a Pokemon battle in, I don't know, it's been a long time, maybe Black 2, White 2, not counting, battle facilities. It's been a long time since I've lost to a trainer. Like Arceus, I was losing to not many people, but I lost fights, which was just absurd. Like I've never actually lost fights in Pokemon battles. Because in Scarlet and Violet, of course, you blow through everything. It's incredible. Like even the champion, I know we talked about this in our review, but like the champion was a joke. The first Pokemon she should have sent out was that Pokemon with toxic spikes. That's her ace. It's so stupid. Her ace is on toxic spikes. Like you already have your full team. It's like, okay, my one Pokemon can't even get poisoned because it's only upon switch out. It's just so stupid. And even the DLC doesn't help the game. Like the Teal Mask DLC, you explore this island in Japan. It's like, okay, great. More story about bullying, and like her little brother becomes like a psycho, going to shoot up the school because he's upset you befriended the Pokemon that got bullied. And it's like, okay, great. And the story was just so obvious. Even the Indigo Disc. We spend the whole story in the Blueberry Academy biodome, and then it's like, oh, okay, we kind of forgot. It's called the Indigo Disc. Let's go capture Terapagos because that's what the story's called. It's just a waste of time, and that guy became a bully. It's like stupid. Like I said, I'm not a little kid. I don't care about bullying stories anymore. It's not even engaging. It's like, oh, he was too good at Pokemon, took it too seriously. He was like beating people. It wasn't even like real bullying. And another dumb thing too is like that Mochi Mayhem epilogue story. Because I know that you could say, well, it's appealing to, oh, well, now Pokemon, it's a little event now, capturing, I don't know its name, that Mochi Pokemon, but it's just like, oh, it took over the town and you beat it real quick. It's stupid. A lot of it just feels like a waste of time, a waste of potential, and this is the state of Pokemon. It's I think it was the third best-selling game. We're never going to get an improvement. I know I could say I'm responsible too, all three of us are responsible, but it's just incredibly disappointing. Like I can't imagine myself playing these games anymore. And like I said, it's not because, maybe the games didn't appeal to me anymore. Like it's just they aren't good anymore. I feel like I'm not being kicked out like other stuff. I have to leave because I have too much self-respect. I can't keep playing these bad games and showing my face in public. It's obviously I'm not very high in this game. Throwing it in the D tier. It's so disappointing. And I guess this is my final list. It's very, very, very sad that, you only have really one new game in the upper half, and everything else is down here. All the new games. That's the state of Pokemon, because expecting Game Freak to make competent games is it's too much of an ask. They release, buggy games, the game will constantly crash, won't work. People will still buy it. I could say I'm responsible too, but it's just amazing. Like, it's the third bet. Like, you can't even teach these guys a lesson. They learned the wrong lesson. Black 2 and White 2 sold terrible. It's like, oh, extra effort's bad. We can be incredibly lazy and make even more money. Very, very sad. You hate to see it. Many such cases. All in all, this has been the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased, except ours. And that's my Pokemon tier list. Bye.